it's your boy Gsluke here for our round 3 prize picks targets here for the RBC Heritage. In this quick video, we'll be covering my top 5 props that I'll be adding to my cards here for round 3 to help get to a 12.5x parlay, and of course to try and bring home some of that dough. Now for round 2, it wasn't our best stuff. We ended up having a prop go awry early. We took the under on Ricky Fowler in hole number 14 in. He hit a missile to 15 feet, so we knew it wasn't going to go our way pretty early in the morning, and throughout the day we had a few hit, a few misses as well, but really looking forward here to round 3 to try and get, of course, that 12.5x parlay that we hit twice last week, 2 out of our 4 cards. So coming in with still some momentum, so let's go ahead and hop right on into it. Alright guys, on the screen you can see the stats from round 2. Just first of all, to do a quick review of what we saw here on Friday, and in general, much harder conditions than what we had on Thursday. The scoring average played to 1.5 shots over par, whereas on Thursday it played 0.6 shots under par. So of course a huge difference between the first and second round, and all of that was due to the weather. There was a ton of wind today, 15 to 20 miles an hour of sustained winds, much like I said during yesterday's preview, and that played havoc on these players. You had people missing greens left and right. It was hard to make birdies, and even though there were some solid rounds, I mean, taking a look at the top of the leaderboard, guys were able to shoot 4 under par like a Cantlay, Van Rooyen, Damon, and Tringale, but those were the minority. There were plenty more rounds over par today than under par, but luckily for these players at the very least, maybe not from the viewing perspective, on round 3 on Saturday, much more benign weather. You're looking at just single digit wind gusts for most of the day, just 3 to 7 miles an hour of sustained winds for much of the morning. While it does get to 9 to 10 miles an hour in the afternoon, the wind gusts never get above 14 miles an hour for the entire day. So relatively benign conditions, like I said, which means that the scoring average is going to much closer resemble what we saw there on Thursday than it did there for Friday. And in fact, I think it might actually be even better than what we saw on Thursday. So the first reason for that is the wind was actually the 15 to 20 miles an hour range there on Thursday, but also a lot of the lower tier players have been cut out of the field, right? The guys that shot 5-6 over par most of these days, the amateurs, the people that weren't coming in with the best of form, now haven't made the weekend. So I'm expecting a scoring average close to maybe 1 shot under par. I'm expecting greens and regulation to be easier to hit tomorrow, and of course for fairways to be a little bit easier to come by. So with that all that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the player pool, which it actually a little bit hard to pick. In terms of picking overs, or I guess unders when it comes to strokes, pretty easy because there's a bias towards the harder conditions that we saw today. Guys like Colin Morikawa, guys like Siwoo Kim and Daniel Berger could very well be priced lower or higher than they are, right? There's a little bit of a bias here in the stats based on what we've seen over the last few days, which makes it easy to target guys that we like. But for our fades, for guys that we're trying to take stances against, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So let's first start with the guys that I'm backing, the people that I expect to have a solid round 3, which first off is going to be Colin Morikawa at 69 strokes. Today ended up shooting 1 under par, which was really about average. I mean, it was better than the average, but in terms of these elite tier players, it was right about what we would expect from a Colin Morikawa. The approach play has been pretty solid, but hasn't had that spike putter. Just hasn't made enough putts to really go out there, shoot something in the 3 to 4 under par range, but is hitting the ball beautifully. Going into the week, he was one of my favorite plays, one of my outright bets this week because he's so precise off the tee. Obviously had a very solid showing there at the Masters with the top 5 finish, and the putter, at least over the last 2 to 3 months, has been a strong suit. So I am expecting him to get back to that at some point, and if he continues to hit the ball like he has over this week, very capable of shooting something in the 4 to 5 under par range. So I do like his chances to go under, but more importantly, because we get the 69 number and not something like 68.5, we do get that push at 2 under par. This is a par 71. Keep that in mind with looking at these strokes numbers. So more than capable of at very least getting to that push, if not, of course, hitting the under for us. The next pick I want to talk about is going to be Daniel Berger, who we're taking at 69.5 strokes. So even better than a Morikawa, we get the hook there at 69.5. All he has to do is shoot 2 under par for us to end up hitting here, and he's a much better player than the other people at 69.5. I mean, he's at the same number as guys like an Adam Hadwin, Matt Kuchar, even just 0.5 better than guys like Brian Harman, Poulter, and Aaron Wise is a little bit disrespectful for DB. He's a world-class player, has had a ton of success at Pebble Beach, which is a comp course I'm using for the RBC Heritage. A relatively accurate driver of the golf ball, shot Even par day one, 1 under par today, so not anything special, but he's at the very least been consistent. So, somebody who's been a little bit underrated. Going into the week, I was extremely bullish on his chances to have some success. So now that his number has gone a little bit higher than it should be, right? If he had been 2-3 under par the first 2 days rather than even par or 1 under, you're probably looking at a 68.5 number on Daniel. Now we get him among some of the other scrubs here in the field. I don't want to call Kuchar and Hadman scrubs, but they're not elite tier players, right? And somebody that is an elite tier player is priced among them. So certainly like the under there, even more so than a Colin Morikawa, because we do have that 0.5 hook as well. The next guy I'll be supporting is over here for greens in regulation. It's a little bit of a different category. It is going to be Justin Thomas at 11 GIR. We had him in our prop today, ended up hitting the under for us, which was extremely surprising. He is one of the best iron players in the world, right? Is routinely in the top 5 on tour in terms of shots gained approach. And today really crapped the bed. Just was missing fairways, which makes it really hard to hit these greens. Of course, there's so many tree-lined fairways out here, which again, they block you out. They make it really difficult to even get to the green when you end up missing off the fairway. So really needs to turn it around off the tee. He was extremely inaccurate, but now that he heads into the weekend, he's 8 shots off of first place, which isn't all that many. If he goes out there, shoots 3-4 under par tomorrow, gets himself squarely back into contention. So he still has the motivation, still has a lot of the attentiveness that he's going to need to, right? He's still going to be completely engaged with this event. And him being one of the best approach players in the world, we know he's going to turn it around at some point. I mean, this is Justin Thomas we're talking about. Even when he's missing fairways, just look at his performance on day one. We only ended up hitting a little bit less than 6 fairways. I believe it was 4 or 5 on the day. He still hit a ton of greens. Ended up not hitting like 14 or 15 on the day. Of course, it's hard to do that when you're hardly on the short stuff. But he has still hit well more than the average. So this is a player who, of course, has had a rough start to the week. But if he can turn it around tomorrow, like I said, and he has a ton of motivation to go out there and do so, he's going to hit well more than 11 GIR and potentially could put himself back into contention. So I would consider taking the GIR. That's my favorite prop on the board just because we have a ton of leeway. We also get the push there at 11, which is a huge deal. He can miss up to 7 greens regulation and we can still push. Or I'd even consider taking the strokes, which he's at 68.5. If he was at 69, I guarantee you he would have been on the card as an under. Obviously gives us the push, much like a Colin Morikawa there. But if I'm not going to be able to target the strokes, 11 where we can get that push is a very solid substitute. So that's what I'm going to be going with as my third over and the third guy that I'm supporting. And now for the 2 picks that I'm fading. And one of them is going to be my sweetheart, Patrick Cantlay. I have him in my DFS lineups. I talked about him extensively this week as one of my favorite plays. But the fact of the matter is, he has to shoot at least 4 under par to burn us. If he shoots 3 under, that's a push. Just the number seems a little bit lower than it should be. Now, if this was 68.5, so if it ends up moving, which I think it will, so if you're watching this and it's still at 68, hop on it as soon as humanly possible, would completely change my opinion here, right? Because I think it's extremely likely he shoots something like 2-3 under par, and if he gets to 3 under par, that's at the very worst a push, which when we're trying to get to that 12.5x parlay, I'm trying to jam in as many of these overs on strokes or the unders on other stats as I can. That's extremely valuable, right? Even if he pushes, that's okay for our card, right? If it takes it down to a 4-leg parlay, we still get a little bit of boosted value. I would be more than okay with that. So at 68, it's more the number than anything. Of course, he's in first place at this event, but something to consider about Cantlay as well is that he's in first place by 2 strokes. When you're in first by even just a stroke or even just tied for the lead, you tend to play a lot more conservatively than those that are chasing. So tomorrow, for him to get to 4 or 5 under par, he's going to have to make 5, 6, maybe even 7 birdies. And I really doubt his ability to do so. I just expect him to be a little bit more conservative, perhaps take aim at some of the center of the greens here rather than the flag sticks, and just try and hold on to the lead, right? He's one of the best putters on the PGA Tour, so he could certainly get hot, end up shooting something like 5 or 6 under par tomorrow. But considering his position on the leaderboard, it's hard to back up a ceiling performance from round to round. I don't think he's going to do so. And again, if he ends up shooting 3 under and pushing for us, that is not the end of the world. So I do like him as the first fade I'm going with. And next up, we have Siwoo Kim at 69 strokes. And it's a similar story. Obviously he's a little bit overpriced in my opinion. He should be closer to 69.5. 70 would be a little bit too high, so I don't think it's off by all that much. But if he shoots 2 under par tomorrow, which would be a solid round on this golf course, would still be well above average, he still pushes. So it's just, a case where the number, especially with the push that we have in our back pocket, makes it extremely attractive, especially on a board like this. You know, I mentioned this before, it's hard to find the fades. It's hard to find the guys that take stances against because the board is biased, at least a little bit more difficult than it should be. So he's the best number that I could find on the board as a fade. To this point, he shot 1 under par the first day, 2 under par the next. So at the very best this week has ended up pushing. And he would have to go out there and again have his best round of the tournament to end up screwing us. So I definitely like our chances to at the very least push here, if not hitting the over, getting us to that 12.5x mark. All right, that's all I've got for the prize picks preview. Before we go on and get out of here, go ahead and let me know in the comments what your favorite prop on the board is, whether it's something that I mentioned or completely off my radar. I would love to hear from you, so make sure you go ahead and comment that down below. And also going to have you guys covered for round 4, so make sure you stop by tomorrow night. A video will be dropping around 8:30, maybe 9 p.m. Eastern time for round 4 and Sunday. Of course, if you're entering this card here for round 3, best of luck with all of your props. If you're playing DFS, have any outright bets, any of that sort of fun stuff, best of luck with all of those as well. We're heading into the weekend, going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you like the video if you haven't already. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. That way you don't miss any of the content to come. I appreciate you guys. Again, best of luck, and I'll see you guys next time.